Indian country, Oklahoma. It's a land that many Native American tribes call home. Some have lived here for centuries. Others were forced here by terror, in tears. However, over the centuries, Oklahoma's first Americans have not just survived, they've thrived. And now they're looking forward to a future that's dramatically changed thanks to the Supreme Court. We will look at Oklahoma, Indian country, yesterday, today, and tomorrow in this special edition of Roots TV. "39 nations, one state." This is Native Oklahoma Today. I'm Jay Toybo. Welcome to the special edition of Roots TV. We are here at Oklahoma's first museum dedicated to those tribes, the First Americans Museum. We will also be featuring the Native American exhibit at Sam Noble in Norman. Even though they've suffered great losses, endless abuses, and horrible heartache, they've risen from the ashes to contribute many things to their tribes, our state, and this nation.
Both of my grandsons have long hair. My son has long hair. He's had it for 30 years. He's 30 years old. They moved to Kentucky, and their school was, their mascot was the Braves. And when he got there, immediately they began to make fun of him and called him the school mascot. And so he called me late one night and said, "Grandpa, can you help me come back?" I don't feel welcoming. I want to come back to Oklahoma. And it broke my heart. Because I couldn't do anything about it,
I couldn't do anything about it. That could sum up the Native American story in the United States. Before white colonizers came to North America, up to 100 million people from more than 1,000 indigenous nations lived here. Their culture was advanced with trade networks, agricultural expertise, and well-developed arts and crafts. However, not long after white settlers came to America, the native population began to shrink. Illness, massacres, and the Trail of Tears, where 5 tribes were forced to leave their homelands and march to Oklahoma, destroyed them. Those that survived had little left but the meager scraps of land the government was willing to give them. But even that, they weren't allowed to keep forever. Over centuries, Congress would violate every one of the promises it made with Native Americans, including the land they had promised in Oklahoma. Piece by piece, it was taken away, and by 1890, a year after the land run, the U.S. Census showed that only a third living in Indian Territory were actually Indian. As time marched on, Native Americans weren't treated any better. Forced to assimilate into America's white culture, Native children attended Indian schools, where they were taught to leave their culture behind. And it was just 100 years ago that Native Americans were given full U.S. citizenship and the right to vote. But just like everything else, most states found a way around that law, preventing Natives from voting until 1965.
So that's one of the reasons why I work diligently to address the use of Native imagery in our public schools, because people don't see the impact that it has on the Native students.
Native Americans' complicated past with Oklahoma has created a state full of contradictions and controversies. During this program, we'll touch on several major issues, starting with one of the most important lawsuits in Oklahoma history, the McGirt case.
A landmark Supreme Court ruling has finally forced Oklahoma to face its past dealings with tribes. In the McGirt case, the court ruled that Oklahoma lacks jurisdiction over tribal crimes on reservations, and that convicted child rapist Jimcy McGirt, who is Native, was wrongly prosecuted by the state for a crime committed on the Creek Nation reservation. The decision hasn't just impacted one case, but hundreds of cases among 5 tribal nations, and has now thrown Oklahoma's legal system into disarray.
There are federal treaties that were created long ago that position very clearly that Indian nations and people of Indian descent or Native American descent should only be under the jurisdiction of the federal government or tribal courts. That has been ignored for decades and decades and decades, until finally a case called Murphy came to the 10th Circuit. At that point, the 10th Circuit, under Justice Gorsuch, decided that this was no longer to be the case. And actually, Judge Gorsuch made a very clear communication that the Native American culture and Indians had been repressed and taken advantage of, if you will, by the judicial systems in the state of Oklahoma for, as I say, decades and decades and decades.
I'm an attorney in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we're kind of ground zero for McGirt issues here. For those unfamiliar with what McGirt is, the Supreme Court came down with a ruling this past summer in 2020 that in essence said that the majority of Tulsa County, Okmulgee County, several other counties around are on an Indian reservation because that reservation belonging to the Muskogee Creek Nation was never disestablished by Congress, so therefore we were still on Indian land. Well, when the Supreme Court made this ruling, they made a point of saying that only 15% or so of the population are tribal members, even in Oklahoma. But what they failed to consider is these populations are all grouped within Northeast Oklahoma. In Okmulgee County, for example, they have probably, I would guess, one of the highest per capita tribal member populations in the nation.
Where we see a lot of the, pressure to kind of figure this out comes from death penalty cases. So right now I have a client who is on death row and he is trying to establish McGirt, and that's a lot of pressure for somebody whenever you think about it. Is the state going to put somebody to death potentially when they don't have the authority to do so? And what does that mean, and what does that look like, and how do we make that decision is cumbersome.
My name is Tracy Pretty. I'm a district court judge in District 14 in the state of Oklahoma. I sit on a criminal felony docket in my court. So how I ended up having most of the McGirt cases was that when this decision came out, we all recognized that it was going to affect a lot of cases that were currently filed in Tulsa County, and that it would potentially affect a lot of cases that had already been tried, where convictions had already been obtained by the state and where people are already serving time on those convictions. In an effort to try to streamline and make it less chaotic for our 5 criminal district courts here in Tulsa County, I volunteered to take those cases, to try to keep them all on one docket so that attorneys were coming to one court, the state was coming to one court, and there hopefully would be uniformity of decisions handed out. We've had, just in my court, 961 filed cases come through this court on motions to dismiss and also post-conviction relief applications. We have disposed of 558 of those cases. So we still have quite a few cases pending, waiting for a decision about the Cherokee Nation boundaries. It will be interesting, I think, to see in the next couple of years what this looks like overall.
Another issue that the government neglected for decades is the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Native Americans are far more likely to be assaulted than anyone else, and mostly by people outside of the Native community. But the government has done little to bring justice.
It's all, a matter of these police departments nationwide keeping up with their murders and who, got murdered instead of that person just being a number. What was their background? Where did they come from? Keeping up with that information, it's pretty much on them. As the public, we can only do so much because we're only privy to so much information. Now, the organization was founded in 2016 after our founder had lived on Navajo Nation and seen what it was like and seen how those issues of living on the reservation and what comes with that. She lost several friends to the MMIW issue, to violence. And so the very next year, she was just getting started. She had moved back to where we're based out of in Portland, Oregon. And I had gotten in contact with her and, asked what I could do to help with the MMIW issue because it's something that I care about. And so I just started, looking through public records, looking through different state databases on missing persons. I've been involved for quite a long time, the majority of this organization's existence.
I'm 60 years old. And for as long as I can remember, I've been an activist in social justice circles from the time that I was in college in the 80s. And I started seeing where my talent or my education, could help our cause for justice in the Native American communities. So I started focusing more on Native American issues. You start off with the base statistic that 1 in 5 Native women will be a victim of a violent crime in their lifetime. And then, most of those are perpetrated by a non-Native person against the Native woman. And so that's kind of like the base where you kind of start from. There's no doubt some of these young women and men that are just missing and never heard or seen from again are victims of human trafficking. I would say a high percentage of the missing probably are. The number one thing is if you see something, say something. Don't, if you see somebody under duress being taken, or if you see some kind of violence going on towards someone, it's better to be safe and sorry and say something. We always say when somebody goes missing, you probably know this. They have the show called The First 48 for a reason. Yeah. And so the sooner somebody speaks up, the better, So that's the first thing if you're a person out there, which brings me to the second piece of legislation that we're trying to get passed called the Casey alert. So that when a person goes missing under suspicious circumstances, a media alert and a police bulletin would go out and you'd see it flashing on the highway. So see something, say something is kind of like what I think the public more than anything. Don't just let somebody be dragged to a car in your presence without, inquiring, calling the police, taking their license plate down, something.
Thanks to grassroots efforts by Native Americans, the MMIW movement is finally drawing attention. Just recently, Governor Stitt, a member of the Cherokee Nation, signed into law Ida's Bill. It's named for Ida Beard from El Reno. She went missing in 2015 and has never been found. The law aims to address missing and murdered Native American cases in our state. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation will now coordinate with the U.S. Department of Justice to solve crimes.
Native Americans are also asking Oklahoma to make a monumental decision on its land run monuments. They want action taken against the statues that they say symbolize the taking of native land by non-native settlers. The Oklahoma City Land Run monuments are some of the most famous monuments in the state of Oklahoma and one of the largest bronze sculptures in the world. It's a tribute to the 1889 Land Run. There's a dark side to this tale that is rarely told. Native Americans once more losing what was rightfully theirs in a mad land grab.
People killed each other. The rivers ran red. I mean, you look at the real history books of how they murdered each other to get to stake their claims and ran over each other. It was horrible. My name is Brenda Golden. I am an attorney, activist that practices in Oklahoma, Oklahoma, and one of the co-founders of the group called SPIRIT, which is the acronym for Society to Preserve Indigenous Rights, Indigenous Treaties. And our mission has been to teach the truth about Oklahoma history. We, picked a date, July 8th, in the middle of summer, but we had a really good turnout, like about 200 people for this sit-in for Indigenous Resistance. And somehow, people started thinking that we were going down there to tear down the Land Run monument, that we were going down there to deface, to spray paint, or otherwise maim the Land Run memorial, and which was never the intent. I mean, the intent was about awareness.
However, awareness is causing the removal of other land run monuments around Oklahoma. Last year, Oklahoma City Community College removed its long-standing monument after student and staff protests. Executive Vice President of OCCC, Danita Rose, said it was a step toward inclusion. If our goal is to create a community that is inclusive and welcoming to everyone, a monument that depicts cruelty and oppression can't be on display here. While OU doesn't have any similar land run monuments, they do use a slogan often that some find offensive. The words boomer and sooner originated with the land run, which took land away from Native Americans and gave it to non-natives. Activists say that using the words ignores their connection to the destruction of Native cultures.
I know that the issue of Sooner and Boomer, especially the term using Oklahoma Sooners, has been offensive to Native American communities and certain Native Americans for a long time.
Last year, the OU student government passed the Diversity and Inclusion Consistency Act, which eliminated the use of the word Sooner in certain school activities.
It was authored in hopes that eventually all student organizations across campus who kind of use that terminology would think of adopting like different language whenever they're talking about it.
Native Americans hope that educating Oklahomans on the offensiveness of these terms and images will lead to new understanding and lasting change across the state.
Coming up on this special edition of Roots TV, a Native American woman is using a unique tool to bring change. Find out how this prom dress has become a national treasure. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then these Native artworks are speaking volumes. And lights, camera, action. Native American filmmakers are making real inroads in Hollywood. We are here at the First Americans Museum, which celebrates the rich history of tribal nations. That rich history is also celebrated at the annual Mr. and Miss Indian OU pageant. The event is held each spring at the University of Oklahoma. It recognizes the academic achievements, cultural knowledge, and dedication of these students to the Native American community. The current Miss Indian OU is Selena George. She says her main responsibility is to represent Native Americans at campus and community events. One thing she would like to see changed is the actual title of the pageant.
The title as Miss Indian OU, it's a bit dated, and our organization is actually looking at revising the title and giving it a different name. We're no longer just considered Indians or more indigenous.
The pageant is sponsored by the American Indian Student Association.
Isabella Iucli Cornell wanted to create a statement with the dress she wore for prom, but never imagined that her dress would end up at the nation's capital. Prom, it's one of the most important days of a teenager's life. You go out to the mall or a dress store and pick out that perfect dress. The style becomes a statement of who you are at that special moment in time. One young woman wanted that moment to count for something else, for someone else, for the thousands of women who won't be able to enjoy prom, missing and murdered Indigenous women. As a member of the Choctaw Nation, Isabella Iucli Cornell has grown up knowing about this issue her whole life. It's a situation that has existed for generations. Native women are 12 times more likely to be hurt than all other women.
It's something that I hold really close to my heart and just want more people to be aware about so that it's not just us who is doing the work all the time.
Cornell chose to wear a custom-made dress to address the danger Indigenous women face.
So I chose the color red in my dress to symbolize the missing and murdered Indigenous women's movement. It's something that not a lot of people are aware about, and we don't get a lot of coverage for it. And I think it's intentional because we don't get Amber Alerts when one of our people goes missing. And so it's definitely very frustrating that it's not being taken seriously among people in power and law enforcement officials.
Determined to make an impact, Cornell contacted designer Della Big Hair Stump and asked her to help create her special dress.
Another thing that was important was that I wanted to incorporate some of my tribe-specific designs onto the bodice. And so her designs are Crow, and I wanted to incorporate Choctaw designs in there too. So you'll see on the bodice, there's a diamond pattern on the bodice, and that's significant to us Choctaw people because it represents the diamondback rattlesnake, and it's a really significant design. You'll see it everywhere for us. We love our diamonds. The people at the prom seemed to really like it too, and so it was really well received by everybody who saw it. And but yeah, like knowing the message that was connected to it made it even more special to me, and that it stood for something more than just a pretty thing to wear for one night. It has a message attached to it and a mission with it.
While Cornell wanted her dress to cast light on the issue, she got more attention than she ever realized when the Smithsonian got wind of her special dress.
They asked if I would be willing to donate it to their girlhood exhibit. And at first I had like a lot of mixed emotions about it because Indigenous people have like a strained history with museums and stuff, and how they have been known to take things from our people without our permission. But like it would reach a whole lot more people and they would be able to get educated about the topic. It's currently residing at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. It's such a surreal feeling knowing that my dress is there with like all these other incredible people who were such significant historical figures. This is going to be preserved in a museum where everybody can see it for forever, and my grandkids will be able to like go visit it, and it'll be just a part of my legacy. It's a really special feeling, and it's just something that I hold so close to my heart. My culture, my traditions, my people, my community, they've made me who I am today.
I'm Julia Isararas for Roots TV.
It's not just fashion that's making an impact. All types of Native American businesses are booming across the state. And they're painting a pretty picture for the future of Oklahoma's tribes. We'll have more next. Plus, Native storytellers are making it big on the screen. We'll take you behind the scenes coming up. Welcome back. We are here at the First Americans Museum, which just opened in Oklahoma City. On display are the history, culture, and contributions of the 39 tribal nations in Oklahoma today. The long-awaited Cultural Center showcases the state-of-the-art exhibits and an immersive family discovery center, plus a restaurant serving up Native-inspired cuisine, and a museum store has authentic products by First American artists. The opening comes after years of delay due to Oklahoma state funding issues. A joint venture between the city of Oklahoma, the state, and the Chickasaw Nation finally finished the museum. Tribal nations have been contributing to Oklahoma's economy on other fronts. While casinos have provided millions of tax dollars to Oklahoma, there are many other Native-owned businesses as well. From manufacturing to technology to candy creation, Oklahoma's native businesses have been booming. They're diverse and far-reaching and making a major impact on Oklahoma's economy. Native healthcare centers even shared their supply of COVID-19 vaccines with the rest of the state in 2021, when the vaccine was difficult to find.
Native Americans are also in the business of creating successful art galleries. In Norman, one art dealer is framing First American culture in a whole new way.
My name is Peter Paul Bruno. I'm an artist. I'm a member of the Potawatomi Tribe Citizen Potawatomi Band out of Shawnee, Oklahoma. People ask me how I started painting, and it's like all Native American stories, it's a good story. I was having dinner with Sitting Bull's great-great-great-granddaughter in New Mexico, and she was looking around the universe for things to that needed to be commented on, is what we would say. And she said, "You should be an artist." And she goes, "No, you would be a great artist." And I said, "I know I'm a great artist. I don't have an ego involved in that." And I said, "Well, I don't want to be a starving artist." And so she goes, "You need to paint." So what I did was I would take money out of my paycheck every week and I would buy canvases and paints. And after 2 years of doing that, I finally started painting. I wanted to be able to have the resources to be able to execute any visions and any ideas and commit them to paintings. Mythology is a great portion of our history, Native American history. And this particular painting is called Shaman Dreams, and it's a painting of Mitten Rock in the Southwest. And the mythology is that all the creatures on the earth, which we call our cousins, the insects, the animals, the plants, came out of Mitten Rock. Their spirits came out of Mitten Rock. And so Shaman Dreams is the dreams we have where knowledge is transmitted to us, not just by books, which is current, but by stories. And this is one of our stories. You know, all artists throughout history at some point can't resist social commentary. And so this is an area that I have been exploring. The painting here, the title of it is called White Man's Gift. It's smallpox. It was the first time the United States government waged biological warfare against the native people, us. And the world does not need another General Custer painting. But I decided to do one, and the title of it is Custer wore an arrow shirt. So during the 50s, 40s, there were all these famous ads in Life and Look magazine. And whoever their name was, they would say he wore an arrow shirt. The ghost names up there are the leaders. They weren't really chiefs, they were just leaders of different bands of our nations. And so that's why you see Crazy Horse and Two Moons and Rain in the Face and these others. I ghosted them in because it refers to the ghost dance. And it's the first time in history that a nation has banned a dance and made it illegal. So again, there's all this information out there that I don't think people really understand or have a chance to explore. And out of this project, I've decided to start an American Indian Holocaust Museum to be able to give to people a greater understanding of what has gone on in our history.
Making art on the TV screen has been a challenge for Native American filmmakers. For years, their stories have been rejected by Hollywood, until now. An Oklahoma filmmaker is making it big with a new TV series made by natives about natives.
The function of Native people in films were zombies. I mean, we were the faceless, mindless, wild creatures that John Wayne and whoever else had to get rid of because it represented taming of the West.
That's it for Roots TV, coming at you from First Americans Museum and the Sam Noble Museum. Native Americans will continue to make their mark on our state and this country, creating a new hope and future for tribal nations.